Okay, so what you're looking at here might be hard to see on the camera, but this is actually the basic pad that I've had dirt brought in. Actually, not from anywhere else from our property, but I had someone come in with a loader and just spread dirt out here and just kind of level off a little bit the uneven spots. Initially I was just going to do piers and then just have you could just pop them in the ground and then you could just move the dirt later and just fill everything in. But I talked to someone and he basically talked me in common sense and said, this is just the better way to do it. So I decided to do it this way. It did cost a little bit of money, but it wasn't that much considering how much pain it's probably going to save me later. And so each one of those stakes there has, you can see the ribbons on them. There's plenty of videos on this, so I'm not going to go through it because there's a lot of people that can teach a lot better than me. But basically on each one of these, you'll see these ribbons on them. And what those would represent is the amount of inches off from that post right over there, which is our high point. And every one of these had a different spot on it where dirt had to be added basically so we could get it closer to even. It doesn't have to be exact, but just close. Next thing we're going to do is now we're going to come in on Monday. The guy's going to come out and dig for me, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But basically, this is called blowout. He's got about 10 feet on each side out, so it gives me some room to move in and out and stuff to kind of keep our pad in place just in case, so dirt doesn't, if it was right on the edge here, this dirt could wash away quick or whatever the case. So the idea of it was basically when he brought the dirt in, all we did was he piled the dirt up, evened it out as best we could. We had a laser level. I stood out here and just moved it up and down to kind of determine where dirt needed to be added. You could see there's some low spots in there because of the rain. It brought that stuff out, so we know now. We're like, okay, that spot's low, that's low, etc., etc. So anyways, so what ended up happening was he brought it in, kind of leveled it out as best he could. But in order to compact the dirt down, we waited for it to rain. And once it rained, all I did was took my pickup truck here and just drove it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and just kept driving over it. And now it's pretty hard. So it's a hard enough surface, okay? Now, what will happen is he'll come in and then he's going to measure out the measurements that I gave him. And he's going to dig piers, 10-foot spacing this way, and then 10-foot spacing out back there. So it's 6 piers here, 6 piers here, and in between there's going to be like a kind of like a trench, but basically that's where a stem wall is going to go. So each one of those piers will be tied together with a stem wall, and the stem wall isn't in the ground that deep, but it's about 6 inches in the ground. And there will be rebar all the way around that ties into each one of these piers. So basically all these pier footings are tied together. They're not really piers, but they're kind of like piers. But because with this building like this, all of the weight is going to be distributed on those columns. The walls are not really load bearing in a building like this. And the trusses that I'm building, the 40-foot trusses, those will have weight on them, of course, and then the weight will be distributed to those, which go down into those footings. So that's how these types of buildings work. Basically, your pole barn design, whatever you want to call it. The only thing that we're doing differently here is instead of just putting those posts straight in the ground and then, putting concrete around them and then just pouring a slab around the perimeter like that, we put the stem wall in the ground a little bit, just around the outside to kind of give us a little bit better of a barrier basically underneath the ground, so your slab's just not sitting directly underneath your house, and then things can get under there and that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of reasons to do it, but also tying things together with rebar was kind of important to us. So I took advice on that, and then so I changed up the way I was initially going to do it. I was going to do your traditional pole barn design, so it's kind of a little bit of a hybrid. It costs more, but it makes more sense engineering wise when you look at why you're doing it. But I'm not going to go into it because I'm not an engineer. This is our septic. Now, the only reason there's all this crap around it was because I had cows that were coming in and out of here. I fenced them out finally. So I had to put basically looks like a booby trap, but I had all these stakes around it just to keep these damn things from trampling all over it because, got my risers and stuff on there, and I just, you don't know what these things are going to do. But anyways, so the cows are gone. I got those fenced out. Now, So Monday, he's going to come in and do the digging. All right, I'll update you guys with that. Now, in the meantime, I got my work to do. My work to do as a welder fabricator is I have columns that I'm doing, because I'm doing all steel columns, steel trusses, steel siding, like I told you, and then the woods in between. So first thing I did was I did porch trusses. Now I'll show you here. These are 12-foot porch trusses, pretty small. This is only 1/8 inch angle, 1.5 inch by 1.5. The top bottom cord as well as the webs. And this is like a Warren truss. So these are like 60-degree angles right here, 360s. And so these are just going to hold my porch up. And they're just going to be spaced with the columns. Basically, we're going to have a wraparound porch around here that's going to be 50 foot by 40 foot. And so that's what these are for. And I started on these first because a couple of reasons. I wanted to kind of get used to the swing of things of working on my welding table that I made here, which I also got to talk to you guys about. So this right here is a 40-foot welding table that I made. And the reason I made this is because I'm going to be fabricating my own trusses, my 40-foot trusses for the roof. So in order to do that, I need a huge workspace to do this. You know, moving them, we got tractors and stuff that can move this stuff, but as far as building it, I can't build it on the ground, okay? I could, but I'm not gonna. And I don't have a cement pad or anything. So I would have done it on a cement pad if I had one. But right now, this is the best way for me to do it. So basically what's gonna happen is I'm gonna fabricate these things along this. Once they're fabricated, we're going to flip them over. Going to have to get a tractor or winch or something. I'm going to flip them. I haven't quite figured that out yet, but we're going to flip them over, and then I'm going to weld the backs of them. And then once that's done, we'll have a machine just pick them up and move them in place to where these pier footings are going to be, where the columns will be, and then those will be lifted up into place. So that's the way I'm doing it. I'm not doing my slab right away. I'm actually waiting to do my slab and my rough ends because I want to get the trusses up first and get all that sorted out. And just, it's been a long game with this concrete out here because it's super expensive and people are just overcharging. And so there's just some of it I'm just not willing to do. So I've just been waiting out some things. And I'm not going to be bent over the barrel on this stuff. So some of it I just said, I'll wait, you know, we'll figure it out and I'll figure something cheaper out, but I'm not going to pay $30,000-$40,000 for a fucking slab. It's stupid. So anyways, yeah, so these are my columns. These are 5 inch by 5 inch, 1/4 inch thick steel columns. These are freaking beasts. I love these things. Now you can see they got some rust and stuff on them. I got to clean off. They're not rusted or anything. This is just because they've been sitting out a little bit. But these were pretty expensive. I mean, this cost us about, you know, $2,200 for these columns. You know, a lot more expensive than wood, but they're going to last forever. We have a lot of termites out here, and you know, I don't want to deal with termites. I don't want to deal with rot, any of that stuff. So I'm not messing around with that. So the columns are important. These are 14 feet. These are 10 feet. So this is going to be a single slope building, front and back. Pretty simple building, okay? So that's what's going on right now, folks. And while Monday the person's going to be digging, right now what I'm doing is I did my porch trusses. Next step now is to clean off my columns and then start making my base plates and to be able to anchor these in. So I'm cutting base plates right now, and it seems like what I'm going to end up doing initially, I was going to do your traditional anchor bolts and then have the base plate attached to these and then just, you know, set it on the anchor bolts and then do it that way. But because these are such heavy columns, I mean, these aren't wood, so I mean they're freaking heavy. So you know, they're, even though they're hollow, but especially the 14 footers, I actually decided that I think what I'm going to do, and I just decided today, is that I'm going to make base plates that are going to have welded anchors underneath. So I'm not even going to have the bolts sticking out. And then I'm just going to make smaller base plates on these, and I'm going to weld those to these. And then I'm going to be able to just stand these things up and bend them up, because I'm doing this by myself and I don't have a lot of equipment out here, and I don't want to pay thousands of dollars for people to come out and do this stuff because it can get expensive real quick. And so for me, it's about avoiding that stuff, just using some common sense engineering and simplicity, you know, just you know, so I can lean the posts up and just get them stood up. And but when you got bolts sticking out and stuff, that's harder to do, and you're gonna have to like basically crane these things down to sit on these bolts. And when you're dealing with a 14-foot column that's a heavy steel like that, that can be a problem, especially with one person. So the way I'm doing it is I will have these marked off to where these things are going to sit, and then that way I can just kind of move them around a little bit and get them in place. And then I'm just going to run some beads. I'll weld these suckers right down to these plates, and these plates will be anchored into the ground. Actually be stronger that way. So that's going to be cool. So that's what I'm doing. So that means I got to cut my base plates that are going to sit on these footings. And I also got to, you know, cut some other base plates that are going to be welded onto these, which are much smaller. So yeah, that's what we're doing, folks. So yeah, that's where I'm at. But I want to show you guys the trusses I have. I still got to, these are still tacked in. This one's tacked in, so I got to get that untacked. And so right here, you can see I got my trusses done. Mostly done. I mean, I still got to pretty them up. I got to do some, I got to add the purling cups to the top of them. Got to cut some edges here. And there's a couple more welds I need to do to them, but for the most part, they're finished. Plus that one. So these are my porch trusses. They're sitting here. Don't worry about the rust. We clean these up, and I'll be painting them a certain color once the time comes. But yeah, so these are going to be exposed trusses on our porch. That's what the trusses look like. Now, if you can imagine 40 footers, just a lot longer and bigger steel on the tops and bottoms. Pretty simple, but that's where I'm going. So there's a train coming, and yeah, so I hope that helps everybody to know what's going on out here. If you follow along on this channel, like and subscribe, whatever. I'm gonna take you guys through the process of how I'm building this place, and you know, you guys can watch me fail or watch me succeed, but either way, you can watch and it'll be interesting. And you know, if you're like me, you'll pick something up, learn something. Maybe you won't, but either way, you know, I think it'll be interesting for someone to see, you know, a different take on a metal building, something that a lot of people do, but this is just a different way of doing it. Show you how to fabricate it from the beginning. So I'm gonna get back to work, folks.